Greetings. Welcome, 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 and thank you for joining us for the 5th anniversary Black Blockchain Summit. I am Nana Akua Zenzele. I am a traditional healer, priest, and queen mother. I am here today to offer you greetings of peace and to welcome you to our summit. And as in traditional African culture, we open such events with libation, which is a form of prayer. And as a traditional Akan priest, I will be doing it in Tree and English. So please join us now for our libation to open this 5th year of the Black Blockchain Summit. Anyame, Odumakama, Anyakapon Kwame, Anchurian Pong, and Yamanakosa, a word a day, a sign say ya. O Nana Tigure Bajan sa, Oto and sa, Waffle and sa, Solo G Solo and sa, Kankambia and sa, Duni and sa, Brilliant and sa, Mosi and sa, Yago and sa, Patapa and sa, Sugre and sa, Bogre and sa, and Kingabas and sa, Nana Penin and sa, Nana Sakrabodi and sa, Nana Surgery and sa, Nana Adadi Kofi and sa, Nana Isikatu and sa, all the Bosum and sa, yo, all the Arisha and sa, all the Loa and sa, all the Netaru and sa, Nana no, all the elevated and enlightened ancestors. We invite you and we ask you in today and sign, yo, this is your dream. All of the family represented here today, virtually and in person for this summit, we welcome you, we invite you, and this is your drink. And sign yo. Nana no, me paucho, me akonfo nana akuya adabo. Nana tigereji, nana en kosowa hima ikunfi eswishia. Nana azumas abusia, bogalatanga Ghana. I come today to say madasi nana no. We thank God and all the spirits and all the ancestors for allowing us to be here and present this day. We thank you for every blessing large and every blessing small. We thank you for life, health, and strength. And we thank you for the opportunity to hear this information about this blockchain technology. We thank you for all of the sponsors, all of the speakers, all of the participants, planners, supporters, and yes, all of the members who are participating. We thank you for this day and all the information that will be shared. And we pray that this information is used in a mighty way to advance Black people throughout the planet. We ask that as you move throughout the day in each of us, that you allow us to obtain and absorb all that we need, that we can apply, and that we can utilize for your greatest good. We thank you for all that you will do once we leave this summit, and we thank you for setting the scene and creating opportunities for us to do this again next year and many years in advance. We thank you. And so we say Madasi, Madasi, Madasi you. The libation is finished. I thank you so much for joining us. I pray you have a wonderful day here at the summit. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
They've been doing this for 5 years. They've been holding these summits that are designed to introduce us to technology, summits that are designed to emphasize the role of technology within our Black community. Summits that say, as people of African descent, we have enough of our own who are in the know. We have enough of our own who understand technology. They, few as they are, have a responsibility to share their knowledge, reach out to those of us who are ignorant about technology, and especially now, the blockchain technology, something new, something that we all must understand. So I want to welcome all of you to this summit, but more importantly, I want to thank my brothers, the founders of this very important summit, through their organization, the Bill Murray and I Love Black People organization. Welcome all of you to the 5th anniversary summit of the blockchain technology. Now, I was having a conversation with my brother Mapondera. We are here together in Harare, and so we are having a good time. And I wanted to know, why is it that they are staying with it and they have chosen the Blockchain Summit as the title of their summit that we are having here today? And he was very quick to answer that question and explain to me that there's always a deficiency. We're always lagging behind as a people in catching on to what is really going on, particularly when it comes to technology. And as we continued with our conversation, I said, my brother, for me, I always try to make sure that if I'm talking about an issue, I don't want to get stuck with the leaves and the flowers, the branches of the problem. I want to go right down to the root of the problem. So my brother, yes, you look at me, I'm an old woman, and I know nothing about blockchain technology. Up until you guys started asking me to come and speak, it was just Greek to me. But of course, through the conversations, I know just a little bit, but I'm nowhere near where I need to be. And if you can imagine, if I am this ignorant about the blockchain technology, you can imagine many others. So I said, my brother, look at this stage, blockchain technology, the conversation has been going on for quite a while now. By now, we should have every child in kindergarten, in grade school, be able to talk about or even heard about blockchain technology. And he quickly said to me, Ambassador, that is why this meeting takes place. That's why he and his partner are committed to making sure that this blockchain summit is an annual event that continues to shed light on this technology and technology in general that our people must know. So as we were talking and I was trying to pencil down my conversation, I found myself zooming down to the root cause of why we are lagging behind when it comes to technology, to the root cause of this particular issue where we are left behind, starting with at home, the conversation that take place at our dinner table, in our community, the conversation that take place in our community centers, in our churches, in our schools, in our county, in our country, in our state, when in the case of the United States, in our country, and then in our region, and ultimately around the world. I'm talking about understanding ourselves from what's happening to me at home. Why is it that I'm not able to afford a laptop for my child? If I'm in the United States, I do have electricity, but why is it that I can't afford to buy that laptop so my child can have access to the information that they need, such that from school they continue to work? And if I'm in Africa, why is it that I don't have electricity so I can also be able to, let alone afford a laptop? So we started with those conversations to say, let's begin to understand the why is it that we are lagging behind in the advances in technology. And that sharpened my conversation to where I felt very strongly that maybe we should talk about this ailing tree of life. The tree of life that is life as we know it as people of African descent. As people of African descent, whether we are in Africa, whether we are in South America, whether we are in the Caribbean, whether we are in the United States or Europe, you go to Black communities, the issues are the same. So let's begin by saying, what is it that they have done to us that has led us to be so behind no matter how hard we try? And I found myself going back to when they first came to the continent of Africa. And by they, I mean the Europeans. You see, when they came to Africa, they were not white people. And before they came to Africa, we were not Black people. They came to Africa and found some of the most amazing people on earth. People who are totally indestructible. People who are so powerful, the origins of humanity. People who taught the world what it means to be human. People who taught the world and civilized the world. They found great civilizations, inventions that they themselves didn't have in Europe. So they got together and said, well, how do we conquer such a people? A people that have everything and anything they could ever need, climate they could ever have, living conditions they could never have in their own world. So they strategized and decided that where they should defeat us most was the mind. Because remember, they also realized, if we were to go to genetics 101, that as people of African descent, as Africans, our gene, when it comes to humanity, is dominant. Because life as we know it, it began in Africa. It is because of the Black man and the Black woman that with the rest of the humanity even exists. They were very clear about that fact. So then realizing that there's nothing they can do about the dominant gene, that is the African gene, because theirs is a recessive gene that can be diluted and eliminated. The only place they could defeat us was the mind. Because when it comes to destroying us, it is mission impossible. It simply cannot be done. The African gene, and you notice I'm trying to avoid Black because I'm going to a point. This gene cannot be destroyed. So they set out to destroy us where it matters the most, the mind. They set out to put out a system that makes us believe that everything to do with Europe is better and more desirable, and everything to do with Africa is bad and undesirable. It wasn't good enough just to say that. So they had to bring in some symbolism. So they took us to school. They taught us about the various colors, black, red, yellow, green. But they focused on two colors, black and white, and gave those two colors attributes. They told Black was horrible, it was dirty, it was filthy, it was undesirable. Shy away from anything Black. And they said white was pure and beautiful and desirable, and that's what you want to aspire to be. Purity. So white was pure, and Black was bad, ugly, and dirty. And then they said, let's go to church. And they told us about a place called heaven and a place called hell. And they said, in heaven, you find beautiful beings called angels. They are wonderful. They do good things. They are caring and loving. And you want to grow up to be like them. And they said, oh, by the way, those angels are white. And also, while they may not look white, they're kind of pinkish. They said, never mind how we look. We are white, like the angels. Blatant lie, but we accepted it. We said, oh, okay. And then they added a caveat. They told us about Jesus Christ, and they said Jesus Christ was also white, like them. Another lie. Because we all know that when Mary and Joseph were running away from King Herod, they were told to take Jesus Christ to Egypt. Why Egypt? Because in Egypt, he would blend with others who looked like him. Because if Jesus Christ was white, they would have sent him to Europe, where he would blend with others who looked like him. But he was definitely a dark-skinned man. So they said, go to Egypt and hide. So we know that's another lie. And then they turn around and say, oh, by the way, there's a place called hell. And in hell, there's a being called a devil that does horrible things. You definitely don't want to be associated with the devil. And by the way, you people, you're Black, just like the devil. You may not look Black, like the color Black we taught you in school, but never mind that. You're Black like the devil. And so it is. We said, okay, again. So it is, the white people are like the angels, like Jesus Christ. So when we go to church, we are worshiping Jesus Christ. We are worshiping the angels. And subliminally, by so doing, we are worshiping them. and we're denouncing the devil. And by denouncing the devil, we're denouncing ourselves. The seed of self-hate was sown. Centuries ago, my brothers and sisters, that lie remains today. Have you ever wondered, why is it that the colonizers left over 50 years ago, and yet we are still using their colonial textbooks? What is stopping the ministers of education in Africa from rewriting the textbooks, from rewriting the history and teaching our children the truth and nothing but the truth? As we speak today, we have thousands of our ancestors' body parts that are sitting in jars in European basements all over Europe. If you're colonized by the British, they are in the British basements. The Germans, the French, the Portuguese, you name it. Why is it that we are incapable of saying, listen, Britain, listen, Germany, listen, France, all colonizers? The remains of our ancestors must be brought back. We want them, and we want them now. We're giving you 2 weeks. If you don't bring the remains of our ancestors for proper burial, all your citizens, they have 2 weeks to get out. Let's see how quickly those remains will come back. As we speak, our ancestors are classified as trophies of conquest. So they cannot be returned, because you see, I went to Africa and I was in a war and I won. I got my head of a human being, and over here I went hunting and I killed a lion. I got my trophy. So here's the head of a lion over here, and here's the head of a human being. They're both equal. So you can have your citizens back. But the truth is, they don't want the burial of our ancestors, because then there will be a graveyard. There will be a monument. We'll be able to take our children to our heroes' acre, where we can tell them the story. What did this grandmother do? That she fought a vicious war, a war of resistance against the British, against the Germans, against the French. They don't want that history told. So those monuments will bring history back to life. That is the real reason. But what is more disturbing is our failure as Africans to come together as the continent, speak with one voice, and send one strong message once and for all. To say to Europe, we will not engage you anymore if these egregious wrongs are not corrected as a matter of agency. It all goes back to the mind. It all goes back to being defeated before the game even begins. Then they took it a step further. They came up with the Berlin Conference, chopped us up into the tiny little economies that cannot survive on their own. Again, we have failed to create that unity of purpose. We have failed to realize that as Togo, as Congo Brazzaville, as Eswatini, as tiny little countries as Tunisia, we cannot fight them. We cannot win. We are defeated before the game even begins. These are obvious issues that we are aware of, that we know we can never succeed. What is keeping us from coming together and creating that meaningful unity of purpose, so we can begin to address our issues from the core? Lie number one, I am saying to you, my brothers and sisters, lie number one must be denounced, and it must be denounced fully. Lie number one must be understood by us as we speak to the image in the mirror. Ask yourself the question, am I colonized? Am I still suffering from the legacy of slavery and colonization? As I talk to young people, a lot of them will say, oh, no, I'm so glad I don't have that problem. Oh, yes, you do. If I may share a little story of my own niece, a nurse at a hospital. They're getting ready to have a meeting. She walks in the conference room and there's one seat left in the front row. She takes it. And just as she's sitting down, another white nurse, her colleague, walks in. Without thinking, she got up because she realized she took the last seat. And as she was walking away, she thought about me, her aunt. She goes, oh my God, my aunt would kill me for doing this. She ran back and she grabbed that seat before that nurse could sit down. But she was so mad at herself. And after the conference, she called me. She said, Auntie, now I see what you mean. When you were telling me about colonization, I didn't understand it. I never thought I had that disease. And she said, after that, as I was realizing what I'd just done, I said to myself, if this was a Black nurse who had walked through that door, would I have gotten up to give up this? And the answer is no. What has been done to us, my brothers and sisters, is deep. The subliminal messages are everywhere. It's going to take a conscious effort from each and every one of us to constantly work around it. Talk to the image in the mirror. Check yourself out. When you go to that boardroom table as someone who works for the World Bank, as somebody who works for IMF, as somebody who is in the government, as you represent, ask yourself, am I coming to the table with the right frame of mind? Or am I coming to the table with a colonized mind? Because if you go to the negotiating table with a colonized mind, garbage in, garbage out. That is why singularly, we're unable to defend ourselves as a people. That is why singularly, we continue to do some of the dumbest, stupid things. Situations that we can stand up and push back and fight and defend our Africa. We're unable to do it because we're afraid of the white man. You put us in front of a white man, we're defeated, our knees start buckling in. That has got to change. They're no better than us. We must understand they have put themselves on a pedestal where they don't belong. They go on a high horse and we let them stay on that high horse. No, 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 no. They must come down from their high horse. And we need to also realize that we need to come out from where we put ourselves under the table. Somewhere in the middle is where we need to meet. And it is there in the middle that we can have serious conversations as equals. The question is, do you feel equal to those who don't look like you? Or do you feel inferior automatically? We must heal from what I call line number one. And once we deal with line number one, the rest of the systems that are keeping us down, such as what the World Bank is doing, the geofinancial systems, the geotrade systems, the multinationals that continue to live in Africa, they never left. They own and run Africa. They employ the majority of the Africans today. How do we get ourselves out of this? They continue to siphon billions of dollars out of Africa. 75% of the minerals traded at the London Stock Exchange are from Africa, and we don't own any of them. They're involved in illegal trade, illegal mining, trade of wildlife and exotic plants. I use DRC as an example. There will never be peace in DRC. The people who are benefiting from the illegal activities in the Congo, they will never want to see a stable DRC. And the same is true wherever you find them in Africa. You'll never see anywhere where there is a natural resource discovered in Africa. Just wait, pretty soon there's instability there. I like to use the example of Ghana when they discovered oil. The question was, when is the coup coming? Look at what happened in Mozambique as soon as they discovered natural gas. They know how to play the game, and we allow them to use us as instruments of our own self-destruction. How long are we going to continue to play this game and fall into their little traps? At what point are we going to understand the geopolitics and refuse to be used as instruments of our own self-destruction? The World Trade Organization, they give a blind eye to Switzerland. I travel all over Africa. Swiss coffee, Swiss chocolate. Where are those humongous chocolate cocoa fields and coffee fields in Switzerland? A lot of it are African products that are being relabeled. And the World Trade Organization is giving it a blind eye. And it has done so for decades since what we call, quote unquote, independence. I'm saying this to say, my brothers and sisters, you are the smart ones. You are the educated ones. You have a responsibility to make sure that the young ones who come behind you, they understand the geopolitics and how it affects the child in Africa, in a village, and their inability to afford $7 to go to school a semester. Their inability to have electricity so they can read at night. The inability of a person of African descent in Colombia to suffer the same circumstances, just like those in Africa. The inability of a young child in Europe, in a Black community, in the United States, to afford a laptop, to afford a meal. That's what I'm talking about. When you understand the geopolitics, it's not by design that we're just destined to be poor in masses. The systems defeat us before the game even begins. And that is why I am so proud of my brothers for putting this conference together. The conference that's going to keep reminding us the importance of technology and the role it plays in our development, not only development in our communities, in our countries, but personal development. It is through understanding of these technologies that we can begin to also turn the corner. It is through understanding of these technologies that even as we go the process of self-healing, the process of understanding and healing the mind, and fighting these forces of colonization and slavery. I know there are many who will say, well, Ambassador, how do you keep talking about colonization? Well, those who say that, please, colonization is a system. They put it in place and they left. And now we are on automatic pilot of stupidity. We just continue to carry it forward. How do you undo poor little Eswatini going to the market to negotiate with China? You don't call that colonization? How do you say that is over? It's not over. You were set on a trajectory of defeat, plain and simple. So let's wake up, guys. I've heard so many of you smart ones. We can't keep blaming colonization. It is a system. Colonization is not a thing that you can say, it was here today and it's gone tomorrow. Oh, no. Understand the systems, because it is through this system that you smart people can begin to make a difference. So if you educated ones don't understand the systems, what chance do the young ones have? So yes, to Brother Mapondera, to Brother Skinner, and your entire board, I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing in keeping that candle burning so our young people can understand the importance of technology in our daily lives. And as we engage the global world, it is technology that's going to lead us into the future. I thank you all for giving me this time, and I want to leave you with one message. In summary, think of the African tree of life, the issues above the ground and the issues below the ground. The issues above the ground is what they want us to focus on. The leaves, the flowers, the branches, the fruits, they come and go. I equate those to poor healthcare, poor education, poor infrastructure, leadership, corruption, all issues that you find in other parts of the world. But when it comes to Africa, they are highlighted and put on the tallest pedestal as if that is it. What we need to understand is that the issues below the ground are the issues that we need to deal with. The issues below the ground is what I have attempted to articulate, and that is the mind, which is the biggest one. The world financial policies and how many African countries, at a minimum, a third of their GDP goes towards loan repayment. Some go up to 60% of their GDP goes towards loan repayment. How is that country supposed to survive? And they make you want to concentrate on how you are spending the remaining 40%, but they don't want you to talk about the 60% that they took. Oh, no. Let's not talk about 40%, 60% of your lines that I just took. Let's just talk about why you are not able to take care of your family because you only have 40% of your GDP left. Let's talk about the World Trade Organization, how they're giving a blind eye, and they want to make sure that Africa continues to be the supplier of natural resources, and we turn around and create jobs for Europe, jobs for the East, and we are relegated back to being consumers once again. Let's talk about the multinationals and all the stealing and the looting out of Africa. Let's talk about the illegal activities that are going on in Africa. Millions Let's talk about the safe havens of all these multinationals that are not paying taxes. It's a lot. And then we go back to the brain drain out of Africa. We have a responsibility to repatriate those brains. Africa today, as we stand, not a single country has the ability to build an airport, has an ability to build a railway line. But collectively, we have that ability, but we're divided. So it is, we're constantly, as individual countries, we are looking to the east, we are looking to the west, and completely bypassing our children, because our children are not united. So let's understand the issues of the root, because when those issues of the root are addressed, the issues above the root can disappear. France taking over $500 billion out of Africa every year, 14 countries. Can you imagine? The watchdogs, corruption watchdog, they say 50 billion gets out of Africa every year from corruption. Well, let's double that. Let's say those who are stealing from Africa, let's double it. Let's triple it. Let's quadruple it. Steal some more, make it 200 billion. Guess what? That still leaves 300 billion from what's being taken by France. Are we even talking about it? No. So two thieves. One has 50 billion and the other one has 500 billion. We're putting all our energies talking about the thief with 50 billion. Not only do we not know about the thief with 500 billion, we're not even talking about it. And this is what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters. Let's step back. Let's really understand what is going on in Africa. Let's not be shown a shiny object and run after it. Let's not go after the leaves of this tree and complain about why these leaves, they die from one season after the other. We need to understand, why are these leaves dying? Why is this tree not giving us good fruits? But they want us to stop there. These fruits are not juicy. These fruits are wilted. The flowers don't give good aroma. There's a problem there. And we stop there, except your generation is going to fight and complain about the same things, and the next generation, and the next generation, and that's what we've been doing, because we haven't gone to the root. There is no reason why African countries should be charged exorbitant interest rates, because the rating agencies have chosen to give them frivolous, false evaluations to justify their abuse. Young people, men and women, working for those institutions, stand up, speak up, unite. Don't be afraid. We must refuse to remain under the table and being told to fight over which brother got more of the crumbs under the table. Let's unite. Let's understand that there is a 10-course meal taking place on the table. And that let's unite and not fight over crumbs. And let's demand to be on the table. In fact, we don't even need to demand. Let's just grab a seat and be on the table and get rid of those people. Remind them that they are in our house, having a 10-course meal on the table, and that we're the ones serving them that meal. And after we finish serving them the meal, we go under the table to go fight with my brother and sister about the crumbs under the table. That has got to come to an end. And for you to fight and defend what belongs to you, first you must understand that you're under the table and not on the table. And that's what this conference is all about. The question is, are your eyes open enough? Is your mind awoken enough? Do you really understand the issues of the root of this African tree of life that is ailing? I need you to take ownership. Stand up tall. Africa is counting on you. Africa is counting on its children to stand up and be the soldiers to defend and protect what belongs to us. Our ancestors did it. The only reason they failed is because they were fighting with bows and arrows and they had guns. Well, this is a different war, my children, my brothers and sisters. This is an economic war, and it is calling for the minds to wake up. It is a war of the mind. It is a war of understanding. These people know what they're doing to us, and it is your responsibility to stand up and defend your Africa. I know it's for us to end up caught up in the weeds, oh, this leader, this, and that leader, this, but also remember, A leader is as good as the people behind them. And those people are you and I. Those people are you and I. And sometimes I think we forget the power that we have as we, the people. If we, the people, fail to unite, if we, the people, fail to understand what is really going on, we, the people, will continue to be used as instruments of our own self-destruction. Let's refuse. That era is gone. We don't have to love each other, my brothers and sisters. We don't have to care for each other. We don't have to be neighbors. But we have to realize at some point, when it comes to issues pertaining to our community, pertaining to our county, pertaining to our state, pertaining to our country, and ultimately our continent, we must stick together like super glue. Others have done it and they do it every day. Ask for the voices of the Chinese diaspora loud and clear, the Indians diaspora loud and clear, the Irish, the Jews, the Italians. All other groups of people can come together when it comes to their sheer survival. We have failed to do that as people of African descent. That has got to change. The time is now. Failure is not an option. If we don't create that meaningful unity of purpose for ourselves, we have a responsibility and an obligation to do it for our children and generations to come. The question is, as you walk the streets of Washington, D.C. as a person of African descent, as you walk the streets of London as a person of African descent, what frame of mind are you in? Are you a person of African descent who is there to defend and protect and speak truth to power? Because these people know that what they're doing to us is wrong. I've spoken to many of them. They said, oh, yes. I can give you simple examples. I'm in a restaurant in Africa, for that matter. I'm in front, and the Caucasian person comes behind me. My own child, who looks like me, would call them behind me and leave me. Yeah, the good ones will say, no, 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 they came before me. But the majority, they enjoy white privilege. They'll gladly move and go ahead. A lot of them know. They know they come to Africa, they're treated like gods, and they just enjoy it. They know what is being done. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they're getting away with it because we are not standing up and saying, stop it, it is wrong, don't do it to me. That is all we are asking. Ours is a simple ask. As people of African descent, we are saying to the world, do unto us as you want done unto you. That's it. So ours is a simple ask. Ours is a simple fight. Let's unite. Let's create that unity of purpose. Mother Africa is counting on all of us to defend her. Thank you. Enjoy the conference. Again, another journey to the beginning of the healing that we need as a people. United we stand, divided we fall. Thank you.
Welcome to the 2022 Black Blockchain Summit in Howard University. I am Dr. Todd Shern, the Senior Howard University Computer Science faculty member. From cryptocurrency to blockchain smart contracts, this in-person and virtual 5th anniversary summit themed Peaceful Solutions to Violent World Problems will be the most informative summit ever. There will be panel discussions, entrepreneur interviews, and industry presentations. New this year is Yard Hack, a 24-hour competition featuring collegiate students prototyping original blockchain applications. On Friday, a reception will be held honoring Dr. Gary Harris, Howard University electrical engineering professor, instrumental in making the first Black Blockchain Summit reality. California to Kenya, Trinidad to Tennessee, to right here in DC. Visit blackblockchainsummit.com for the latest schedule, announcements, and events. The 2022 Black Blockchain Summit starts now. Hello, welcome to the 2022 Black Blockchain Summit in Howard University. I'm Dr. Todd Shern.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Wanaina Karanja. I'm the CEO of Melanin Solar, a company based in East Africa, building a peer-to-peer distributed network on blockchain for energy. I'm also a co-host at the Black Blockchain Summit through our community blockchain accelerator called BitUp Africa. And I'm very happy to be with you guys here for the 5th anniversary of the Black Blockchain Summit. Today, I have sort of a masterclass on driving sustainable energy solutions in Black communities globally. And I'll be taking you through sort of a theoretical exercise as well as a practical exercise on how we can leverage blockchain technology and cryptocurrency to drive the adoption of energy amongst Black people. So I'll begin with sort of a brief history of what we do. As I mentioned before, we are driving sustainable energy access across Africa. We believe there's been a huge shift due to the pandemic, and open source technologies are coming into fore to drive the adoption of solutions. We've seen a lot of solutions in the financial services space with distributed or decentralized finance. And now we're going to see sort of innovations in the energy space with decentralized energy or distributed energy solutions. I've been operating in the Bitcoin space and blockchain space in East Africa for the past, actually now 9 years. And we have built sort of a robust community that has seen countries like Kenya, where I'm from, become the leading countries in terms of adoption of blockchain technology. Kenya, I believe, Nigeria are number 1 and 2 into peer-to-peer finance using Bitcoin. And we're very proud of these achievements. And we think that this adoption can be extended into other key areas that affect Black people around the world. And one of the huge challenges we have is access to reliable energy. So our long-term vision as a company is to connect about 500,000 households to our distributed peer-to-peer energy market by 2025. And I'll be taking you through how we intend to do that. The energy market in Africa alone is 2 trillion. This is the potential size of this market that is untapped. And blockchain, together with Internet of Things, IoT, smart technology, machine learning, and artificial intelligence will drive the adoption of these technologies. 17% of the world population lives in Africa, and Africa has the fastest growth in terms of population, with countries like Nigeria leading. And we want to be able to see how we can leverage this technology to bring about reliable access to energy with these, within these communities. The challenge we have is solar systems are very expensive. You can see the crisis in Europe in terms of the war in Ukraine and Russia. It has made the access to energy a huge challenge. They have invested a lot in renewables, but the cost of renewables is still not at parity with the cost of oil or nuclear energy. So we believe at Melanin Solar, the gap is there because of a technological problem. We need to bring down the cost of solar PV panels, but we also need to leverage those panels and utilize them to the maximum levels. So, so solar vendors are forced to sell their solar products to consumers who are mostly farmers using debt-driven instruments. This could be lease agreements or hire purchase. And a lot of times, these people who are mostly farmers again are not able to pay for the, for the solar systems, and they enter into debt. And sometimes these systems get repoed, so they don't even get the benefit of access to energy. This is a huge problem. So how do we begin to solve this problem? There is an article on the World Economic Forum website. This is about maybe 4 years ago, which was sort of talking about how cryptocurrency mining could become the new face of energy storage. And I think the article, if I recall, went into how mining taps into wasted energy. So you have a lot of idle energy that is not utilized. This could be from the gas flares, where you see like gas burning. That energy is now being tapped to mine industrial scale cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, converting energy from one form to another form. In this case, it's being turned from a natural resource, which is gas, into a cryptocurrency token, which is Bitcoin. So we've taken the same concept and sort of innovated around it for now renewable energy, which is more sustainable in the future. I think it's important to look at the financial sort of adoption of Bitcoin over the last 13 years of its existence. As I mentioned before, we have countries like Nigeria, which are leading. In 2020, during the pandemic, they were able to move $500,000 from the diaspora to Nigeria. And this was able to help a lot of families in Nigeria be able to sustain themselves during the pandemic. Bitcoin as a settlement monetary network in the same year has been moving huge amounts of money cost effectively. You can move, there's an example of somebody moving $2.4 billion for a cost of $26. Try to do that with the traditional financial system, what we call TradeFi. There's going to be a huge cost because you have to think of the carbon footprint of all these buildings, of all these sort of high towers in every major city, New York, Nairobi, London. These are being disrupted by blockchain technology. So the energy you see going into mining Bitcoin, for example, is cheaper than the energy that we use to deploy brick and mortar facilities, such as the banking halls and the banking institutions. We're moving from brick and mortar into a digital space for monetary settlement. Bitcoin mining is currently using about 56% renewables. Of course, that can always be improved in the energy mix. But again, because it's addressing wastage in terms of brick and mortar, you actually find that Bitcoin mining is actually more cost effective, though we acknowledge that we can always improve the adoption of renewables. So the community that we sort of nurtured over the past 7 years worked with individuals from the United States. We have worked with Professor Todd Shan, who is a resident professor at Howard University in the computer science department, who wrote the green paper for a protocol that utilizes CPU power or small mobile computing power to do the same thing that Bitcoin is doing, to convert idle energy, in this case solar energy, for the most part, into a digital token, which are now calling the WIVE token. The WIVE token has actually a 150-year mining schedule. It's been mined for about 2 years. Most of the rewards will be issued in 20 years. And it has a maximum supply of 100 million. We've seen people over 20 plus countries in all continents mine WIVE and join the network and support the network. Encapsulated immutably in the Genesis block. As we all know, blockchains that are secured by proof of work are largely immutable. So for this particular blockchain, the community decided to encapsulate the SDGs 7, 9, 11, and 13, which talk about the sustainable adoption of energy, climate action, clean innovation in terms of energy, as well as industrialization and smart cities, all covered within these sustainable development goals. So the opportunity is homes, really. Homes are mostly for farmers. I mentioned before, by the year 2025, we want to be able to go to 500,000 households. We already know that there are 700,000 existing solar sites on the continent of Africa. We've looked at different areas where Black communities in particular exist, or indigenous communities. And the countries are, for example, Zambia, Malawi, Congo, Nigeria, Rwanda, Kenya, and the Caribbean countries, Aruba, Haiti. There's a huge need by Black communities who are what we call energy deficient. So we want to be able to deploy these solutions there, powered by blockchain technology. So our solution is essentially what we call a smart box. I have an example here. These are early prototypes. We're just using normal CPU devices, but we are designing and building a custom device that removes trust using blockchain technology for accountability, brings down transaction costs by leveraging the Lightning Network, the peer-to-peer Lightning Network, decentralizes production and transmission and consumption of solar energy, and provides direct access to distributed solar energy, allowing multiple solar providers, whom we call prosumers, to store excess energy. And of course, with the stored energy in a digital form, you can now open peer-to-peer markets where transactions are transparent, verifiable, and secure. So we also do, this is something that we've traditionally done a lot at GitHub Africa, which is training of engineers. We've trained a number of engineers. You can see an example there. We have electrical engineers working with a blockchain engineer. We have Simon there, and they're able to deploy this system in a village, Maasai village in East Africa. If you're curious about who the Maasai are, they dress like this. So this is like a statue of a Maasai person. And we also give these statues as awards at the Black Blockchain Summit. So how do we get the word out for this technology? Under Melanin, we've built a platform called Nukia. Nuki means bee in Swahili. And the slogan is a sustainable world. It is a metaverse where we are leveraging NFTs to drive the adoption of this technology. So there we have some NFTs of some famous Black people. I can see Kunzinga there. I can see Dedan Kimathi being represented there by NFT. I can see Nelson Mandela and Harriet Tubman. These NFTs are inspired by those people. And if you hold a UK NFT, you're able to get one of these boxes when they're ready. And then you can begin to sort of plug them into your solar unit and mine using excess energy, converting them into the Wive coin or Wive cryptocurrency. So we're now going to go into the practical exercise where we sort of play around with technology. So allow me to stop sharing my screen and share my other screen. Just a second. So here we go. So this is a screen of the Wive website. This is again the community project built by developers around the world. You can visit wive.io and can take you to the homepage for a second. You can see, it's GPU, SIP GPU and ASIC resistant. It's a Bitcoin descendant, meaning that it was forked with the Bitcoin code. The Bitcoin code is open source, and a lot of thousands of projects have been developed from the Bitcoin code. Bitcoin is the father of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. It's transparent and accountable. I'll show you sort of a demo of the Blockchain Explorer. You can download the green paper that's written by Professor Todd Shern. This is a typical CPU from a Raspberry Pi. You can come here and sort of open the guides and learn how to mine. There's a guide. If you're an experienced Linux operator, you can deploy a node very easily. Wive has wallets. Wive is also available on exchanges. It's trading on peer-to-peer markets, as I mentioned before. And there are a lot of data aggregators for transparency. So I'll take you now to the Explorer. So you click here, and you have the Explorer. You can see it is a network hash of 428.688 at the moment. That is in kilo hashes per second, meaning it's a widely distributed blockchain. And all of this is efficient, idle, and utilized CPU power. So I can take you to the network. You can see the countries that are mining Wive: Kenya, Indonesia, Brazil, United States, United Kingdom, Indonesia again, Canada, Sweden, Venezuela, France, Ukraine, wow, Turkey, Mauritius, China, Canada, United States, Netherlands. United States and Netherlands appear to be the majority, together with the United Kingdom and Germany. Brazil, Indonesia. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of Kenya as well. Historically, we've seen a lot of countries like Mozambique, Ghana, Nigeria come in. But we have to keep, as a community, the Black Blockchain Summit community, driving the adoption of protocols that are being developed by Black people, either in full or in part, like the Wive protocol, and begin to have a presence so that it's not only people from the West who are benefiting from this technology. So this is one of the things that we've tried to do with the summit, is educate as many people as possible. Yes, so this is another Explorer, which has the tools for those who want to geek out on the tools. And now we're going to sort of look at what our wallet looks like. This is the mining pool. We can see it has 52 miners. These are 52 miners mining at the moment. And then finally, this is Melanin Solar, my company. where we're building the smart box that leverages the WIFE protocol. So before I go into the actual demo, one of the things I'd like to announce for the Black blockchain community is our trivia application, which is being launched today at the summit. So you can go to play.nuki.com, sign up, play trivia. The trivia is on Bitcoin, Ethereum, WIVE, NFTs, solar energy, and sustainability. These are the key topics that we want to educate people on. So it's a very simple game where you choose the correct answer, and you begin to earn points, and these points can be withdrawn for WIVE coins. So this is an initiative that we are launching at the summit to drive the adoption of blockchain knowledge, to fight scams, and to increase awareness about e-projects that are addressing sustainability and access to energy within Black communities. So I'll take you to the wallet briefly. So I'll share my screen. This is what a WIVE wallet looks like. I installed it earlier. It's very easy to install on Windows and Linux. I believe the WIVE code developers are releasing one for Macintosh for our friends in the United States. It's been hotly requested. And now I'll sort of demonstrate how mining looks like. So I'm coming to run the miner. Let me run the miner and see. There we go. And then let me share the screen. So that's what a miner looks like. And as I wind up, we'll wait for some WIVEs to be mined. You can see I have opened a thread of 4,096 hashes and contributed 0.2745 with the laptop I'm using to present. So this is what sort of an efficient, sustainable blockchain is trying to achieve, to leverage idle CPU mining power. And we're just going to wait for a successful mind share. And hopefully that will happen before my time is up. I believe I have 1 or 2 minutes. Let's see if we get this. Very interesting. So here we go. Another one has been generated, and I have an accepted hash very quickly within 2 minutes for 0.2, and it says yay. So with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Do enjoy the rest of the summit. You have sort of a big day ahead with many great speakers. I look forward to joining the sessions as well. Asante sana, and thank you for joining us at the Black Blockchain Summit.
for today, we are looking at community-based Black education and how we can enhance that education on the Web3. So I remember when I was growing up, one of the ways in which we were given education was through folk tales, through storytelling, through different ways in which we can get education, but without actually having to go to school. In other words, we're given this informal kind of education, which helped to shape us, which helped to make us better people. I'm very much interested in that aspect of education. I don't know if because we're coming from different background. I don't know how our initial education was like. So I want us to look at that and say, do we think it's possible to be able to take that kind of education, which I believe it is the education that we own as Black people? We own this kind of education, folk tales and storytelling and all that. So is it possible for us to be able to do that, enhance that kind of education through the Web3? So that's my first question that I would love us to discuss that one.
So I'll take a stab at it first. To answer your question, yes, it is possible. I think that there are definitely some hurdles, but that type of education is one of the major, not components, but that's what's so exciting about Web3. Some of the barriers can be removed and you can get educators directly in front of the learners, which is very important. Now, one of the components of community-based education is about lifelong learning. And to me, lifelong learning means you have from K beyond 12. Like you mentioned, grandfathers learning, but not just learning, educating also. So if we're able to find a way to get some of the educators, when I say educators, I don't mean just teachers. I mean your uncles, your aunties, those who still have that, I don't want to say the Black education, but those who have the history and can find some way to bottle it up and put it in some sort of package and make it available on Web3, because that's a big component of it, being able to package up and make it available for users.
Oh, thank you, Colin.
I think that's very possible, and I'm hoping to see that. Here in the States, our educational system is very hierarchical. It's very top down. The curriculums and everything are set in environments that we're not a part of. One thing that I really enjoyed about my trip to Nairobi, Kenya, a few years ago, was I got the storytelling, kind of that history, and it's more oratorical, it's more impactful. Blockchain and distributed ledger technologies and Web3 kind of disintermediate. So the content provider will be able to, as Colin said earlier, get directly in front of the educators, in front of students. And I think that's really going to be, if you will, the framework that we now can kind of get back some of our history, and we can take a much more active role in the education of our kids, of our people.
I believe I agree with everything that they're both saying. I do hope that Web3 would deliver that. I think it might be a challenge for Web3 because Web3 doesn't address the misinformation, the disinformation, and the malinformation that's miseducating our community currently. Right now, we all use a landmass of information called the internet that has a lot of bots, a lot of algorithms, sales funnels, echo chambers, and things that are meant to convert our way of thinking into the thought process of a consumer. So I believe that we would have to first look at addressing some of the concerns around the miseducation and the things that we use as reference material to make certain decisions. And if we can do that, then I believe that Web3 as a technology, as a vehicle, could be really helpful and useful as well.
Okay, I think we somehow do agree to a certain level that is possible. So, but how do we make it possible? I mean, like that would be like my follow-up question. How do we make all that possible? Maybe I start with you, Pastor. How do we make it possible?
Well, I think that we have to stop looking at things in terms of companies. I think that if I could have like just 1 minute, it goes from culture to communities, and communities create economies, which create exchanges, which create industries, which create marketplaces, and then you get companies. So you have all this space between culture, community, and then we create companies. And then you have this space in here where there's these other aspects of resources being allocated and cycled within the community that we don't have the infrastructure for. So I believe that we need to be thinking about creating our first digital infrastructure I think that we should be in the thought process of building economies and ways to cycle resources in our community using NFTs and a lot of the digital assets that we have access to, using blockchain for ownership, and really combining these technologies in a harmonious way that will address our community's concerns instead of continuing to move in the direction that other communities are moving in, because they already have their economies. And we're driving their economies with our ideas that these brothers are talking about. We're driving these economies with our culture and with our community. So we need to bridge that gap with infrastructure, in my opinion.
And I think you say something that really speaks to building, you know, we're developing these unified data platforms so that we can become the hub. Because the key to infrastructure, I like the way that you kind of had that stratified system to get to the company or to the corporation, because in order to get to that point, you have to have cohesiveness. You have to have kind of like a unified understanding of what it is. And so to start from the very beginning point, you know, for us is kind of get reconnected to what culture is, because there is so much misinformation driving our community and the decisions right now. And I speak a lot to our kids and I mentor a lot. And the first process is a kind of a reformation of the mindset. That's what's driving it. So a lot of it, I think, is going to have to start on local levels as far as groups that are impactful, and they can become the vehicle to, as the brother was saying, to get us past those first 3 steps. And now we have us guys working on this infrastructure to build these platforms to connect everyone to unified information that's coherent, that's cohesive, but most importantly, that we're driving. We are, as he said, we're 1.2 trillion in economic activity or output, but we spend 2.12% of that with each other. Until we can overcome those massive hurdles, you know, the education piece now can be a vehicle to help us get past that. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox, but so many tie-ins to how getting to the front of it. I love the way you kind of broke that out.
Real talk, okay, real talk.
No, stay on the soapbox. People need to hear that, right? So I'm going to go back to a topic that every year we say this: education, right? Educating people on the potential of technology, also educating people on how to use technology. 2 very important parts. What is the potential? And W3 is supposedly going to level the playing field a little bit. I know a lot of technology say that, but making people understand what technology can do and also how to use it. But I also want to add another piece. We know that when people are in the blockchain space, there are a lot of what I call mercenaries. And one of the things we want to do, if we're putting learners directly in front of the educators, we want to make sure educators are there to educate and are not there to make money, because this is going to change a lot of the playing field, level up, so to speak. But now educators are going to be in a position to create their own curriculum, create their own learning topics. And are they doing that because they want to really teach or because they want to make money? You know, sort of like mercenaries versus missionaries. So we have to make sure that coming in, people have the education to understand the potential. Yeah, you can make some money, but it's more important to help people skill up and be able to be in a better position next year than they are today through the taking of these courses and the impact of education.
Because you're talking about a real transition of value. Real, like, value is based off the language of the people that need it at the time. Like, in a real system, if we're really leveraging this technology, it's gonna be people being educated in the places where they have an insecurity, where they're lacking, where they're this, where they're that. And you have to, for real value exchange to take place, it's not going to be like homogenous. It's not going to be the same thing for everybody. Like, everybody on this call needs something different. So how can we assign value the exact same way? Like, no, we need these systems of governance. We need for communities to be able to come together and educate themselves on what they need to know. I agree with that.
Oh, thank you so much. We've got Mason who has just joined us. So maybe you can do a little bit of intro and then we can continue from there.
Okay, well, I've been an educator teaching technology for the past 22 years, and I'm a curriculum creator. And I created a curriculum in New York City that was used for New York City Tech, which is like, well, for my school, but New York City Tech also used my curriculum as well. And you know, but I'm also a multimedia artist and, you know, just open to, you know, trying to educate. I'm about to launch a platform where I'm teaching computer science for all, but for just community members, because I feel that, you know, it's just technology is like the ABCs. It's just like we need, in order to level this playing field, we need to learn this language. But what I found is that a lot of computer science teachers, the way that they teach computer science, and a lot of people who know the technology don't know how to teach the technology effectively. So that's one thing, that's my expertise, is I'm really, really good at teaching technology, computer science and coding to just the average person. I think I consider myself a computer science whisperer.
Thank you so much, Megan. Yes, we're talking a lot about leveling the play field and circulating of educational information. And also we talk about some kind of misinformation that sometimes circulate also at the same time. As we're trying to bring that education to the people, there's also some kind of misinformation that happens. So how what kind of application or use cases can we, as the Black community, come up with to try and enhance this Black education, and at the same time ensuring that there is no misinformation that will be put on the blockchain?
Well, there will be misinformation put on the blockchain. Because I think the power of Web3 is you can really put anything out there, right? But I think it goes back to, if you have a community that sort of, I can't say filters, but sort of is there to play. I think Robert said it, governance, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how to do that. You can have DAO set up, but you know, I'm not sure if that's the answer. So I personally don't know the answer to that question. So let the Robert speak on it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and definitely if we are gonna have an opportunity to be able to do that, then we need a safe space to be able to do it in. We need a place that we have to own our infrastructure, or else somebody else can compromise the integrity of the information that we're sharing with our community. So we have to own the intellectual property. We need to be the core developers and key developers of that infrastructure. And I believe we need to be the first investors in, so that we can maintain control of what would be an economy. In doing that, I think that educators like the Queen on here, like people that actually are teaching how to use technology the right way, and then looking at technology from the lens of utility. We shouldn't just look at tech. That's what they're doing, and that's to make money. That's to get, I think that's what's been said here. We need to be thinking about, how can we use technology in our way, in our innovative, unique way, to be able to move us along, instead of continuing to perpetuate something that is the programming and the miseducation that is our mind, in my opinion.
I think that hits on it. And speaking to the functionality, you know, because I work with a group called True Colors, and it's people that are gang members, and the emphasis is on economic empowerment, but it's about 45, 50 guys, and now they have this brewing company, and basically it's gangs, whether it be disciples, whether it be Bloods, Crips, all coming together in order to create and produce beer, right? So now we can plug in education to that environment where it truly is decentralized, where we truly are, we can curate the content. How do we build functional systems for you, brother? The brother is coming out of the pen that nobody else will hire, but this program and this structure, you know, now it allows us to get to the front of productive capacity, and we can talk about deeper economic conversations, deeper technological conversations, because we can build curated content for these decentralized communities. So I think functionality and us understanding that decentralization works best for us, because we need to disintermediate and we need to remove all of the noise so that we can build curated solutions for our community.
And then on just a practical level, the UX, you know, the front end part of it, really understanding our demographic, what their needs are, and then combining that with the African aesthetic and African functionality. Like, what does that mean? Like, that has to be our foundation. How, just like you said, how we always innovate. We make something out of nothing, right? And everyone is waiting for us to see how we're going to use the technology so they can take it and make billions off of it. Right. So my first proposal is to say that this is a sacred Black space, and that this is for us and we need to heal. Now, if you want to come on board to heal us and only us, then it's okay. But still, no, I just think it should be a sacred Black space. I mean, because what happens is that people come in and they appropriate, and exploit us. So I feel that we need to, and once people know this, the Black people that are involved in it, because just like, let's say you have domestic people who are suffering from domestic violence and women, they don't let men in, right? Because they're like, if they were abused by men, it triggers. And I say that we need a sacred Black space just for us, because white people can trigger us and make us act in ways like they've trained us to act. Like, oh, let me just give you all of our secrets and all our information, and let me soothe your tears, So I think that's our foundation. And then once we have a solid foundation that's based on also healing, the programming, then we can take this and soar. But until that time, because I always think of the Chinese people who had that period of time when it was like no foreigners involved, and they were able to look where the Chinese are today. So we need to that has to be our core. And then, understand our aesthetics, our needs, our demographics, and then build a design, a UX design, and then people will come and then we'll flourish. That's hypothetically, that's.
So Mason, I agree with everything you said. I think the challenge there is, they appropriate and steal because they also fund. So a big major part of it is funding, right? The government, the government and a lot of other philanthropists, they are releasing a lot of money into the stream now to support programs like this, but they're still the ones funding. And believe it or not, they're still pulling strings. So a major part of it is being able to fund our own initiatives, which quite frankly, we all know is a major, major gap.
But we can do it though. I mean, that's one thing great about technology. Crowdsourcing, we have all these different technology applications that we never had before. We just need to just apply it, that we can do it.
I think what plagues our community the most is the tyranny of good intentions and the racism of diminished expectations. Once we overcome those, and this allows us now, if we become completely self-reliant, in my view, those are done. The capital, the capital is always a challenge, but I think sometimes efforts become so dilutive, because as Sister Mason was saying, you have outsiders coming in, that tyranny of good intentions. They're coming in to help out. And what happens is they usurp the movement, they usurp the intellectual property, and they go in another direction, and we're left with the plight. And I think that has to be addressed, and education of that, and it's kind of all encompassing.
But also to create a product. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt you, but to create a product. Why can't we create a product? Create a product and purchases. I mean, with technology, create a product and said, okay, support, but something that's needed, okay. And then we can create our own income.
Yeah, we're talking about creating a product. We only have 5 minutes left. Talking about creating a product, how can we ensure that whatever that we create, we can be able to own it? Like you were talking about, we can create and then somebody comes and they take the use. But how can we create and then we own what we have created?
But isn't that what the purpose of blockchain is? Is that it's a consensus, and then it's on the chain. It's like this is ours,
Yeah.
So
I wanted to ask that question so that whoever will be listening will get to understand the value that the Web3, the value that the blockchain tech brings in as far as ownership is concerned. So
I would say, just to answer, my thoughts on that question would be that I think we need to build libraries that can't be burnt to the ground. I think that it wouldn't be in our best interest to get rid of all of the misinformation and disinformation that exists. It would be better for us to categorize it and see what's been used against us, and to start thinking tactically about how we can begin to understand what's drawing our attention. There's a whole thing around this attention economy that's taking place. And one of the projects that we're working on is Timbuk 2.0, which is essentially a library that exists in Web 4 that will allow for us to access information for web and mobile applications that's contextually relevant to our community. something that they can't destroy, can't be burnt down, because we want to use blockchain technology to hold that information in a space that is dedicated and committed to what we need to do as a community. So collectively getting the researchers and the people to bring that data into one environment so that our developers can find great ways to use it is a big thing that I think needs to take place, in my opinion.
Yeah, like Sister Mason said, we have to create something, create a product, create an environment, and we have to make sure that our people are a major part of the ecosystem, right? It's all about numbers. We have to make sure that if we want to control it, we have to have people in there who understand it, right? Who understand it, utilize it, because if they understand, utilize it, they're going to be bringing in their network, their friends, their family, right? If they're finding a benefit. So making sure that we are a major part of the ecosystem.
Thank you so much. I think we did throw around a lot of ideas, and I believe the listeners, are taking notes, and I also believe that from here we're going to apply some of the things that we have been discussing, and ensuring that our education is secured, and also that our people get the right information, and also that we're able to have those digital libraries that do not ban. I love that when he talked about libraries that do not ban. So definitely, if we can be able to take all that information and be able to digitize whatever information that we have, and we can be able to build those digital infrastructures, we'll be able to, Mason said, talked about healing, talked about understanding our demography and all that. So coming at the end of the discussion, maybe I would like for you to say one little something that you want to say. Yeah, just to summarize what our discussion. If you've got anything you want to say.
Well, just to combine, I think we need a think tank, because people are spending 24/7 watching us and studying us and using our information and our data. So we need to take it back, and we need to use it.
Thank you, Mason, for that.
Yep. I'll go back to education. People, especially in our community, need to understand the power of Web3. They need to understand the power of Web2. Okay, they need to understand what's the current technology to really understand the power of Web3. If you don't understand where Web2 is compared to Web3, then you're not going to really be a champion of Web3. But understanding the potential of Web3, talking about potential, again, education, and not just the young ones. Education from K all the way through people with gray hair like me who are a little technology adverse. If they are not used to using the current technology, then Web3, the metaverse, they may think it's too much for them. So education, and having platforms and interfaces that are easy to understand.
Yep, well said, Colin. Thank you so much for that. Yep.
And I think it kind of a synopsis of it all. I think it's really self-reliance, economic. I preach this all the time: economic independence, and then as far as education, we have to tell our own curated stories. We have to get read, or we have to acknowledge that there's disinformation, misinformation, that there are external groups that are driving our value. And if we can begin to recapture the value that we create, I talk about the internet of value all the time. And what's really happening is Web3 allows us to really own it. You can be the world now is going away from globalism, if you will. If you watch what's happening closely, people are getting more interconnected within their own in-groups. We have an opportunity to build, as the brother was saying earlier, the infrastructure, especially technologically, to build our own economy. And we must educate, but we must understand it's got to be self-reliance. We have to be driven by us, and to clarify who's the us.
My name is Vernon J. I'm the CEO over at Equity Coin. We are the first digital token backed by affordable housing in the United States. And it's just an absolute pleasure to be on the call with so many people from all over the world. I'm a real estate guy through and through. It runs through my veins. I've been in the multifamily space for 17 years now, and I've done a little bit under $200 million in transactions as a real estate broker. So I'm excited to talk about how Equity Coin is birthing this new sharing equity economy using Web3 and affordable housing, as well as real estate crowdfunding. Excited to talk.
Thank you, Venom.
Sure,
Yep.
I'll go next. My name is Chris Bates. I am a cybersecurity specialist, and I have worked in the past with Bitland as an organization that focused on registering properties onto blockchains that were built locally. And it was an organization that was focused on distributing education to help the proper solution be fit to the proper local culture. I'm currently working at Smart Contract Research Forum as the lead on the Pan-African Grants Program that does research into what case studies have been executed to then find African academics to supplement the case studies where they are not present.
Thank you, Chris.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, John.
Hi, good morning. My name is John Bridgewater. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bluestone Technologies. We're the founder of BID out here in the Bahamas. And what we've built is basically digital infrastructure to allow persons to not only create a biometric unique ID, but leveraging that ID to in various different ecosystems, whether it's financial payments, whether it's self-sovereign, identity for land ownership, titles, etc. We've created a super platform that allows persons to uniquely use their identity across various different spectrums.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for the intro. All right. All right. Is there anyone left behind, or we all in? We did all our intros. Okay. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you, Veron. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, John. Yes. As the topic of the day is, about land ownership, about asset ownership, and the key is buying up the block. I think for some of you, if you've done the research, you'll know that this actually is what it's an idea for calling the Black community to have ownership, or putting back ownership in the hands of the Black community. It's about keeping those resources that are generated by the Black community to keep them within the community. So today we are looking at how Web3 can really help the Black community to have Black ownership, or to have access to land and to have access to assets. So maybe you can kick off by asking ourselves a question: do people really understand Web3? So such that we can be able to start talking about putting ownership on the Web3. Do people really understand that our community is educated enough?
So I can speak to that. For the most part, I don't think most people really understand Web3, but if you extrapolate that further, most people don't understand the things that they use in the daily life. So if I was to ask people like, how does Zoom work?
Yeah.
Do you know how Zoom works without Googling it? Probably not. It's not your fault, but we are subject to so many technologies and engineering feats that we use in our daily lives. It's that we don't really have the time to learn how refrigerators work, or how monitors work, or how the internet even works. So it's on specialists to apply these technologies in places where they're invisible anyway, in the sense of when we're talking about securing information or property, anything that needs to be secured. So for example, one's email account. It's like if I asked a person, how does your password work? Most people don't understand how their passwords even work. So it's a matter of, it's not whether people understand how the technology works or not. Is the technology implemented in a way that makes it invisible so that they don't have to understand how it works? So, and currently, Web3 is not really that well implemented. So the user interface and the user interactions are too obtuse so that it makes it difficult for people to use. So the more that technology becomes invisible, the easier it will be for people to actually use it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yep.
Chris, those are great points, man. And I was just speaking at the Ocala Crypto Summit over in Florida just 2 days ago, and I asked the audience a simple question. I asked them, how many people have a website? And everybody raised their hand, right? Every single person raised their hand. It was about 99%. And then I asked the same question. I said, how many people have their own token? How many people have their own smart contract? And it was almost, nobody raised their hand. And I think there's a really clear parallel between Web3, the emergence of Web3 and the emergence of the internet 25 years ago. If I asked 25 years ago, in a room full of people or business owners, how many people have a website, it would have been the same percentage of people who have tokens today. So I think what we're seeing is, just like how I can create a website and literally by the time we're off this call, I can create a really sick, dope website using Squarespace, using GoDaddy, WordPress. It's become so ubiquitous. It's become so easy. And it's not only become easy, but it's almost become a necessity. If you have a business, it's a necessity to have a website. And I think very similarly with tokenization, in 20 years from today, every business is going to be tokenized. Every company is going to have a token in some form or fashion. So I think, what we like to do, and one of our I would say most valuable trademarks with equity platforms is the sharing equity economy. And I think about Airbnb, I think about Uber, I think about the sharing economy 1.0, where if 20 years ago I said, we're going to sleep at a stranger's home, you would probably laugh me out of the room. Or if I said that we were going to ride in a stranger's car, you wouldn't take me too seriously. But now we're starting to see that people are gravitating towards the sharing equity economy. And the next iteration is the disruption of banks. So now with getting funding for real estate, for example, specifically what we do with equity platforms, now this sharing equity economy is going to replace the bank with community. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And I can concur a lot with Vernon and Chris were saying. I think that it doesn't, but really to what Chris is saying, it doesn't really matter the understanding of the technology itself. If we were to really question how everything works in the world today, we wouldn't really get anything done because we're too busy questioning. I think that the advancement of the technology, to Vernon's point, is that we're still early. We're still early. And the great thing about Web3 today is that you have a lot of no-code platforms that are starting to launch, which is, to Vernon's point, it's going to get easier and easier for persons to create their own smart contracts, to launch their own DAOs, to launch their own tokens, etc., which then feeds into having the technology easily distributable, but also user-friendly, which is pointing back to Chris's point. We're at the stage where, even in the 21st century, in the 2020s, it's still pretty difficult for people to create websites and to create platforms and stuff like that. Like they're just now getting exposed. And with the advent of this technology, now that exposure is catching up, you basically see a gap starting to close. Whereas in the early days in Web 2, most Black people didn't have technology startups to launch because everyone was still picking up traditional professions, doctors, lawyers, and stuff like that, professions that we didn't have or our community wasn't so abundant of during the 50s, 60s, 70s type era. Now, with the advent of Web3, to Chris's point about equity and inclusion, and to Vernon's point about equity and inclusion, and to Chris's point about the technology, you're now seeing people in our community leveraging that to now get easier access to raise funds and to do other things. My point to a lot of persons in our conversations, even here in the Bahamas, as it relates to land titles, ownership, and anything resolving around Web3, you can't, it's just new digital infrastructure. And you essentially can't have a digital economy without first having digital citizens. And that's why we built our digital identity platform. So when you do own a token, you do own an NFT that's associated to your land title, for persons aren't squatting on your land, at least in generations to come, those individuals or those descendants can actually now leverage that digital identity and actually prove their rights to ownership to anything that they have, whether it's a token or whether it's a part of that land deed or anything else of the sort.
Real quick, I want to speak to that in that we are at a point where our history was actively destroyed so that it seems like we weren't in a place of equity, in that when Black Wall Street existed and it was bombed, we had doctors, we had airlines, we had our own, it wasn't even about segregation so much as we had people in positions of having ascended to a certain level of capital efficiency and effectiveness in the grand scheme. And those things were bombed and literally burned out of existence. So then it was made to seem as if we never got to that point. So our history is like, in America, it makes it seem like, oh, we went from slavery to now, when in fact we had a lot of economic success, but that success was literally burned and destroyed and then written out of the history books so that people only learned about Black Wall Street through science fiction. So this is where something like a decentralized ledger is more resistant to being bombed or being burnt. It's not as easy to destroy the trace of ownership, so that if someone burnt or bombed a person away from their land, the digital deed would make it so that, yeah, right now they're under duress, but we have a ledger to show that that person still actually owns that land no matter what's happening.
Yeah, that's a good point that you just brought in here, Chris. I do believe when all that burning was happening in Tusker, a lot of things were lost, a lot of information was lost, and a lot of people were left with nothing to show that they were once part of this Black Wall Street community. But now with the Web3, it's making things to be permanent and to be permanently embedded on the blockchain. So I think that was a good point that you came up with right there, and it fits very well on the discussion.
Yeah, and then as I understand, they actually have an investigation going on in America right now, investigating what transpired in Oklahoma around that time.
Yeah.
I see it now happening, and they're now trying to recover remains and stuff like that, so persons can get their retributions who own the land. And with digital identities and Web3 today, you can actually, as Chris is saying, at least in a more modern version. Right now, it is just wallet addresses. It's just still premature. So we have the opportunity, once our community starts to understand how important it is to get involved with this technology, and once platforms are building, no-code solutions that are drag and drop solutions, it will be easier for our community to not only get involved, take advantage, and pass it on to the next generation coming forward.
Yeah. How do we make it possible that our community, like normally when we talk about the developments that are happening, especially like in the Web3, we are focused mostly maybe in certain areas in the country, and we find that certain places in the community are ignored. So how do we make sure that we get everybody involved so that at the end of the day, they're part of people that will own maybe a small amount of shares in property or small amount of shares in assets? How do we bring all these people in to be part of the movement?
I think that one of the, and to back to Chris's point, and my experience, I'm technical. I started off when I was 14, writing programs, cheat codes for online popular games, selling those subscriptions for $25 a month, and we scaled to 1 million users at RP. And one of the things that I realized during that time was it's not about the back-end technology. It's about the front end, the user interface, the user experience. That's the biggest hurdle, not just facing our community getting into Web3, but much larger adoption in the Web3 space in general. It's the UI, UX, and too many developers and projects are focused on trying to get rich quick, as opposed to building lasting technologies that will see the profits over time. And you saw this actually happen during the dot-com bubble. Everyone had an internet startup. And when the dot-com bubble burst, only a few platforms were left standing. And you see a lot of this now happening even in the space today in Web3. I think that there's just so many projects focused on ways to get rich, as opposed to ways to embed the technology. Like we use Microsoft Word, we use Google Doc, we use these technologies that have become a part of our everyday lives. And until we focus the development of these applications to benefit our everyday lives, that's when I believe that we will start to cross those hurdles, like getting into the educational system, decentralizing the history. Developers have to get to a point where it's not about getting rich right now, but in the next 5 years, we can realize those gains.
Well, John, to that point, man, to that point, bro, it's, I see blockchain as a revolutionary technology disguised as a casino, and it's incredible to think about, even with the gold rush, 90% of the gold diggers were not the ones who, they all went bankrupt. A lot of them went bankrupt. The people who were succeeded were the people who created the tools, the pitchforks, the shovels.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that really bothered me, because Jay-Z is like, I'm in New York right now. I live in LA, but I'm literally a few blocks away from where he grew up, and I grew up here as well. And him with Jack Dorsey coming together, creating the Bitcoin Academy, kind of ruffled my feathers, because I thought about it really long and deep. I said, why did they not create the Blockchain Academy? Why are they not teaching kids how to develop smart contracts instead of teaching them how to invest in Bitcoin? I know that it serves Square's interest, Block's interest, to get more people from the hood or from Black people to have wallets, Bitcoin wallets, but that's not where the juice is. And just to your point, John, I think even if we're not developers, even if you're just a business person, or if you have ideas of creating efficiencies in different industries, it's so important to learn about smart contracts, because it's almost a fact that if you know how to build a smart contract, you know how to navigate it, you know how to create a comprehensive functionality within a smart contract, you will never go broke. You'll always have capital. You'll always have ability to create capital. So I'm a big proponent of that, John, for sure.
So I'm on the same page on all those things, except I want to speak to the other point in that when we're talking about these technologies, if you look at how they're deployed, that speaks to how the person deploying it or organization deploying it intends to be used. So if we're talking about farmers in places with low literacy rates, if the UX and UI is heavily dependent on words, that's not going to work. So one of the things that I've learned in deploying is, like, when we went to different places, the more the interface was reliant on symbols and not like words, the easier it would be to deploy the same interface in Haiti or Uganda or Kenya. So this is where, if we're talking about actual rural farmers that have a super low literacy rate, the interface to put their information on the blockchain has to recognize that those people are in a certain situation, that you can't just leapfrog them to being literate and understanding how to use these interfaces. So if something's deploying and not recognizing the actual users as to
It
their
has to be user
culture,
friendly.
it has to be, or else it's actually just trying to exploit this hype around it. And just to that notion, like the people who are in like a situation where they're oppressed or minorities, they can't go learn smart contracts. They have to worry about getting killed by cops. They have to worry about getting breakfast. There's a whole bunch of things that people can't realistically just go learn smart contracts. So it's like, if we're going to include that lowest class of people who are already oppressed, we have to realistically approach them and say, hey, they're not going to be able to, you can't proportionally buy into wealth. Like, you can't invest your way out of poverty. It just doesn't mathematically work. So we're going to have to lift them up in the sense of collective responsibility, or ujima, in that those people are our responsibility to help pull up. So if we need to invest in means of pulling them out of that poverty situation, that's what we have to do, instead of just expecting them to go learn smart contracts, because they can't realistically do that.
Well, I disagree with that, man. I disagree with the notion that people who might not have the means can't learn how to.
Not that they can't, it's that it's not realistic, because I work with like underprivileged high school kids, and they have to deal with like carrying their families. When you're talking about 17-year-olds that have to like carry their family and have to work after school, it's not really realistic. They're already overworked, they're already under duress. So expecting a 17-year-old kid who might be pregnant, who might be already paying their way through the house to go learn smart contracts is not a realistic expectation on that people, or in that demographic, which is why I feel like the rhetoric needs to be like less onus of responsibility on people who are in poverty and under duress. Like, we have to stop expecting those people to be able to overcome their trauma and overcome their poverty by themselves. Like, they need help, and we have to change the rhetoric to make it like stop seeming like they can just pull themselves out, in my opinion.
I like the argument on both sides. Oh, sorry.
And just to even, I see the argument, and I grew up in foster care. So I didn't have my parents around for me to go to after school programs and pick up a computer. I just picked up a computer because it was around with some of the homes that I was bouncing around. And, it's just, to both of Vernon and Chris's point, for Vernon's perspective, I see it as there are kids who can definitely pick up the computer and learn smart contracts, etc. But to Chris's point, those kids that are picking up the computer and learning up smart contracts, essentially, until those kids can get out of the ghetto, essentially, or can get out of their situation where they can now retreat and to build smart contracts and join the other percentage of the community that's building, essentially, one is going to have to carry the weight for the other. And that's just been happening from time. Mathematically, when you go to the Department of Statistics, when you go to the U.S. Commerce, the Federal Bureau of Statistics, etc., when you look at the statistics online, if you want to just even get into the data, 30% of white Americans are on welfare. So that means the other 63% of white Americans are carrying the load for that 30% of Americans that are on welfare. The reality is, we as Black people have to get over the mentality of everyone has to be able to do it. Some of us will have to take the burden for the rest of them, and they will have to pick it up later. And that's just how the generational cycle has gone from time, especially when you look at our history. And the reality is, about 40 to 55% of Black men in America are in the middle class. So Black men have started to pull themselves up out of an environment where it was extreme poverty and extreme duress. And sure, there's police brutality and stuff going on, but there's a good percentage of Black men in America that are actually doing the work, showing the work, and pulling those individuals and giving our community a better name. So I wouldn't rely on persons like Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey to put infrastructure in place for kids to be able to go to school. sure, that's, and at the end of the day, rich people stay with rich people because they have money to do the things. So if you're the only guy with money and you come into a situation where people need money, you're going to be the only resource that's tugged on.
It's all time, on time, feeling legendary. Legendary history for my people like it's February. February time, on time, feeling legendary. Legendary history for my people like it's February. February time, on time, feeling legendary. Legendary history for my people like it's February. February time, on time, feeling legendary. Making history for my people like it's February. Making hip hop, make their lips drop. Two-stepping on these races like a TikTok. I've been trying to make them jump like I'm crisscross. Fruity Loops making beats colored. It's all time, on time, feeling legendary. Legendary history for my people like it's February. February time, on time, feeling legendary. Legendary history for my people like it's February. February time, on time, feeling legendary. Legendary history for my people like it's February. February time, on time, feeling legendary. Making history for my people like it's February. Making hip hop, make their lips drop. Two-stepping on these races like a TikTok. I've been trying to make them jump like I'm crisscross. Fruity Loops making beats colored.
We're back for another great panel. We have a huge lineup of fantastic people here today. Our topic for this baraza is disrupting self-hate, racism, tribalism through Web3. And what I would like is for each of my guests to do a quick, maybe 2-minute, no more than 2-minute introduction of themselves, and then we'll hop right into the topic. We'll start with Dr. Tyreen Wright, then go to Pascal Atazama, then to Michael Abraham, and then to Kevin, and then to Robbie.
I was asking actually if I could go second to last. You didn't see me in the chat there.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, that's perfectly fine. So we'll have Robbie go last, and then that's fine. You can start the introductions. So second was Pascal. So Pascal, you're gonna go first?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I can go ahead. Hello, my name is Pascal. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Canza Finance. And basically, we're building financial products leveraging Web3 technology and also traditional financial infrastructures. But we are quickly become a venture studio with several solutions across decentralized storage, DeFi solutions, and TradFi solutions as well. And yeah, so I mean, my background is pretty much in engineering, but I've dabbled across multiple different fields. I've been in the space for about, I would say, 4 years now, and really excited to be here, I think for the third or fourth time, and I look forward to participating in the conversation. Thank you.
Kevin, I believe.
So we're up to me. Very good. Dr. Kevin Washington, also known as Mwata Kairi. I'm an African-centered psychologist engaged in the process of understanding the human psyche from an African-centered perspective. And so we look at the dynamics of trauma on the psyche of people of African descent, whether it is in the on the continent of Africa or throughout the African diaspora. The fundamental reality that we operate from is that we must engage in therapeutic healing techniques that involve the psyche, the essence of our people, and not utilize alien constructs to realign ourselves with our divine purpose. And so I'm the former chair of psychology and sociology at Grambling State University, and I'm also the CEO and founder of an organization Roots Africa, but also an organization known as NANSAPO, which deals with the development of therapeutic techniques called Ubuntu psychotherapy. And Roots Africa, we take people to the continent of Africa, actually to make the fundamental connections in the Gambia with the divine essence of who they are, but also talk about economic development and growth. So we challenge the notions of tribalism in the countries, even the diasporan tribalism. And we look at economic growth and development for ourselves here in the US as well as on the continent. And so that is a major form of our work, is to be able to make the connections between us and the Africans on the continent for economic liberation.
Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Abraha. I am the NFT lead with the Tigray Art Collective, working on an NFT mixed media project, attempting to bridge the gap and fundraise money for an active civil war conflict happening in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. We are mixed media artists, so not just digital, but also physical printed artist. I'm a technologist myself. I have a background in product management and also business development in the Web3 space.
Robbie.
Hey everyone, my name is Robbie Greenfield, CEO and co-founder of Umoja Labs. My background, been in the blockchain space since 2011, started with Bitcoin scripting. Later became the head of social impact at Consensus, where we deployed blockchain-based products across around 17 emerging markets, and now focus on building crypto-enabled payments infrastructure purpose-built for informal markets, specifically targeting the aid sector and agribusiness sectors across Eastern Africa.
And Dr. Wright.
Wherever you all are, my name is Dr. Tyreen Wright. I'm a historian in political sciences. I teach for the City University of New York, author of the book Booker T. Washington in Africa, Thinking of a Pan-Africanist. And I also actually work for I Love Black People. I teach the Pan-African history and organizing course for our ambassadors internationally. And if you know I Love Black People, it's everywhere. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. As I promised, a very stellar, a very diverse panel for this discussion of disrupting self-hatred and racism and tribalism through Web3. I think the first question I have, and I'd like each of you to at least take a minute to answer the question, is how do you define Web3? And then when the context of this definition of what Web3 is, what do you foresee as some of the problems that we need to avoid? And why that, let me couch that in. We know that we long ago had Black Planet. It kind of de-evolved. We're currently in other mainstream social media, and we see the attacks within group and out of group. So as we're stepping into this new zone of Web3, and you've defined this Web3, how do we take the past knowledge and prevent this type of self-destructive, potential self-destructive outcome? So I'd let Michael go first.
So to kind of go into it, when me as an African living here in the US, there are many distinctions that you kind of experience, and also being in technology, there's also various barriers that we kind of experience when it comes to access, when it comes to education, when it comes to kind of, barriers with languages and things like that. So I really do believe that amongst all these different barriers, when it comes to, the rich ethnic diversity that we have on the continent also has a heavy impact on providing access to these things. So, in various situations, when it comes to particularly, in the situation that I'm promoting and actively speaking on, ethnic tribalism is a part of our nature, it is part of our history historically, and we see those things trickle down into our society in our day-to-day, and we can use technology to improve and kind of provide resources to those that are being affected and aid. But at the same time, sometimes technology also is an extension of these things that can harm people, right? Whether it's hate speech online, whether it's various methods of government organizations creating barriers against their own people. There's so many methods of how we can tackle issues such as that question.
Fantastic. Robbie?
Yeah, I would define Web3 as, when consumers and businesses interface with, decentralized systems rather than centralized enterprises more broadly. Like that's the kind of, UX shift in terms of the who is providing certain services. I think more broadly in terms of what should be avoided is, those systems, you need to have the right parameters and models to ensure equity and to ensure that you're not exposing vulnerable populations to unreasonable risk. I mean, that's the biggest thing, especially when it comes to financial services, because what we're seeing right now, more broadly, I think this is one of the reasons why crypto winter is happening outside of, the broader economic downturn, in traditional economy, is that a lot of the protocols that exist don't seek to be used pragmatically. Like if we look at lending protocols like Aave and Compound, nobody's using those protocols to take out real loans, right? You need 80% collateral. You just wait another month and save the 20%. And so the primary use of a lot of these protocols right now is for yield rather than pragmatism. And that exposes people to a lot of risk because there's more speculative rather than, looking into the utility of something. And so I think those are things that we need to avoid, but it's also an opportunity, right? Because it shows that there's still a new generation of protocols and dApps that need to exist to provide that pragmatism that doesn't currently exist, with the yield-based models that we see today.
Pascal.
Yeah, similar to Robbie, I would say Web3, I think, is the next evolution of, service interaction over the internet. And I would say what we can do to kind of avoid basically some malpractices making its way into Web3 is by getting involved across the board. I think there's kind of a limitation. I think with the internet, right? For example, there was just we weren't as involved from infrastructure standpoint, innovation standpoint, and in some instances, a consumption standpoint, right? There were massive amounts of people that, especially in emerging markets in the African continent, that cannot access the internet. So I think with Web3, the way we kind of like avoid this and make sure that the bias doesn't impact us as much is by building and also consuming what we build, right? And I agree to what Robbie said, doing so in a manner where we're tying that around real use cases and real value creation for people.
Okay. Just for clarity's sake, that we also want to talk about, what we do to each other. So I understand from the centralization point of corporations providing a social media platform and then maybe moving into financial products that are decentralized or quasi-decentralized.